All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Um, I'm Smita Sahay. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Osava Literary Review and Matchbox by Osava. And this particular book launch is extremely important to me and everyone here. And we hope to anyone who watches this even later, because there has been a recent article about major novelists living abroad. Then there's been a counter article. Then, a couple of months back, The Guardian mentioned that Indians are not readers, but festivals are coming up, lit fests are coming up. And I want to tell you that collectively, all of us here, we do not buy into any of those write-ups. We don't care about all that because this is where real writers are. This is where real books are. This is where independent publishing is. And a lot of real work is happening here. And of course, there are structural inequalities everywhere. But I'm very grateful to be here amongst all of you who are doing so many things apart from being full-time novelists or full-time writers and bringing out these beautiful books. I want to thank the publishers of these books, Red River and Penprint India, and they're doing such a fabulous job. And if somebody wants to read the real literature of India, what is coming out of India, it's important that they look into spaces like these. And with on that note, I want to hand over the evening to my colleague, the very beautiful and very talented Babitha Marina Justin. She's been with us with Usava for like 6 years now, and she joined us as a fiction editor, but now she's a poetry editor. Our poetry section is extremely well loved, and you will find some of the finest poetry being published in our poetry section, thanks to Babitha. She's also an associate professor of English at the Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, Trivandrum, with over 23 years of experience teaching English literary studies, communication skills, visual culture studies. She holds a PhD focusing on travel writing and gender. She is an author of multiple books of poetry and prose. And what I'm holding here is her latest book of short stories. And if you are a lover of the form, or if you're interested in uh, literary fiction coming from the subcontinent, this is a book that you must definitely pick up. And finally, last but not the least, Babita is also an artist who has had multiple exhibitions. Over to you, Babita. Congratulations to all of you who are launching your book today. And thank you to all of you who've come to support us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Smita, for the lovely introduction. And thank you, lovely ladies and gentlemen who've joined us at this hour. And see, we have four books with us. And today we are releasing four wonderful books. And one is co authored by three women. So we will begin with uh, Footnotes in G sharp. That is written jointly, collaboratively written by uh, Shivakami ma'am, Shikhandin, and Geetha Ravichandran. And then we have Kitchen Poems by Nithya Mariam Jacob. And she is also a professor. I'll introduce you later. And Ankush Banerjee's uh, Field Notes on Kindness is the next book that we are going to release, along with my book, The Way Madmen Smell. So before we begin this program, I would like to customarily kind of a formal introduction is necessary because of course we all know each other because I know Shikhandin for ages. Like I'd been following her on Facebook. I know Nithya for such a long time. So Shivkami ma'am is like the lifeblood of Usava. And Ankush, definitely the Navy man, had been one of the strongest elements in Usava. But then a kind of an introduction is definitely needed for the rest of the people to know, especially their literary works. We'll begin with Shivkami, ma'am. Shivkami Velliangiri has been included among the women poets in the history of Indian writing in English by K.R. Srinivasa Iyengar, which is a great honor. And her online chapbook, In My Midriff, was published by Lily Literary Review. How We Measured Time is a debut poetry book nominated for Yatha Katha Film Award. And her poems have appeared in the Penguin Book of Indian Poets. She is one of the founding members of the Quarantine Train, an online platform for poetry. And she's currently the poetry editor of Usawa Literary Magazine. So, welcome, ma'am. You've been such a great inspiration and power behind the Usawa as well as the poetry world. Again, I know you for ages. The kind of passion Shivkami ma'am has for her poetry, I've rarely seen anywhere else. Then it's my privilege to introduce Shikhandin. It's a pen name of an Indian writer. Her books include Impetuous Women, Penguin, The Women on the Red Oxide Flow, Immoderate Men by Speaking Tiger, Vibhuti Cats. And she has co-written a poetry book for Footnotes in G Sharp, which will be publishing tonight, with fellow poets Shivkami Ma'am and Geetha Ravichandran. So next, welcome Shikhandin, to this release function, uh, this online release function. And we move on to Geetha Ravichandran. She has been an IRS woman. Okay, she has had a career as a bureaucrat, and she's retired from IRS. And she has previously published two books of poetry, Arjavam and The Spell of the Rain Tree. Footnotes in G Sharp again is a third book co-authored with these wonderful women, these wonderful poets. The Spell of Rain Tree has been long listed for the Wise Owl Literary Award in 2024, and her poems are featured in various journals and contemporary issues of with emphasis on sustainability. Welcome, Geetha Ravichandran.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Now, the next is a very young and promising woman who is again an English professor in in Kerala, from Kerala. She's Nithya Mariam John, and she is a poet, an academician, and a translator too. A fortnightly columnist in the National Daily. She was nominated for the Pushcart Prize, was semi finalist at the Sunrise Poetry Broadside Contest, and the Brown Critique Poetry Prize. And her latest collection of verses is called the Kitchen Poems. So she has, in fact, found spaces in journals, in many journals, Indian journals and journals abroad, and she'd been writing regularly in the Indian Express, in the New Indian Express, Times of India, etc. Welcome, Nithya, to this release function.
Thank you.
And, and the only man in amongst the release amongst the authors who are releasing their books today is Ankush Banerjee, who is a Navy man who works on masculinities. So welcome, Ankush. He is a masculinity studies research scholar. He's a reviews editor at Usawa, and then he's a serving officer and educator in the Indian Navy. So for him, poetry has been a kind of a lifelong preoccupation, and he's like grown quietly alongside uniforms, classrooms, and research and daily practice. Poetry has like grown along with all those things, and he's the author of two volumes of poetry, The Essence of Eternity and Field Notes of Kindness, which will be releasing today. So these among these four books, three books are were published by Red River, and the other one, uh, Footnotes by Pen Prince. So after introducing the authors, I'd like to just briefly. Should I introduce, or would you introduce after the release? I think it's better if the authors introduce, right? We can actually make it quite informal, or I can also introduce it. It's up to you. Anyway, maybe I'll just give a two-line introduction about each and every book, and we can go into its details in the question answer session. And we can also ask the authors to read out excerpts, uh, whatever they like from the book they are releasing. So I'll begin with footnotes in G sharp. Now, it's a rare and resonant collaboration that brings together three wonderful poets, Shivakami, Velliangiri, Geetha Ravichandran, and Shikhandin. So the, their book is a kind of a richly textured exploration of walking as both an experience and a metaphor. So it also comes from a common love for nature and reflection. So, what makes this collection compelling is that there are three individual styles: anecdotal, musical, and contemporary styles, and they're woven together into a kind of a cohesive whole. So, each poet in this collection, she walks her own paths and they voice their own uh, concerns, and their voices converge with a kind of a harmony, creating perspectives which are very distinct yet seamlessly interlinked. So this is the first book that we are going to release here. Maybe we'll release all the books together. And I would like to introduce Nithya's kitchen poems. Nithya's kitchen poems, in fact, it gathers a lot of ingredients together as we would do in a kitchen, and it stirs the stew. That is what she writes about it. And let the juices flow. Poem after poem is a miracle of abundance. So she says that I peel my heart and slice my body at every supper. I leave the dough of sorrows to rise overnight to make lazy appams at sunrise. So it's an intermingling of memory, of generational transitions, and she also in fact speaks about poems in which you have a world of working from home and the ubiquitous Swiggy. They all coincide with a kind of a nonchalant intermingling. Now this is so she has poems on chapati and chapati boxes, Swiggy, and every poem is a kind of collection, a gray space between life and deaths, of memory and forgetting as well. Our third book, Field Notes on Kindness by Ankush Banerjee, is again a deeply attentive and quietly powerful collection. In fact, the collection explores fragile yet unspoken terrains of empathy, memory, and care. So there is a kind of in Ankush investigates into the kind of masculinities which are present in his life and moving beyond any kind of easy or sentimental understanding of kindness. And his poems, in fact, engage in the careful excavation of emotional life, tracing how tenderness is expressed, sometimes withheld, or at times reshaped within every realities of family, illness, shared histories, etc. So, welcome once again, all the authors. My book, I think Smita will be introducing towards in the next session, and I would love
Oh, I can
all of you.
introduce you right now,
Okay,
introduce
okay,
right now so that all the books can get
all right,
launched
all
together.
right. Thank you,
So,
thank you, Smita. Please
of
go
course,
ahead.
it's my pleasure. So, this is a short story collection. So, it's sort of an outlier today because all the three other books are volumes of poetry. Um, but this is a short story collection written by a poet. So, some books stay with you because of what they say. This one stays because of what it makes you smell. The sweat of memory, the musk of shame, the strange sweetness of faith gone sour. These stories ask what madness, love, and holiness have in common, and why women are always the ones left holding their scent. This collection exists because someone writes unguarded, unashamed, and absolutely alive to the body, where the vernacular is no longer localized and the relationships, the silences, and the bodies are unmistakably Indian.
Thank you so much, Smita. So now we have all the four books. I think it's a time for release. Releasing can be done by holding up our books.
Ankush, we need your
Ankush.
book as well. Do you want to switch it on for one
Okay.
minute?
Just
And we'll take
can
a
you give me just
screen.
5 minutes? I'll come online. I'll come
All
online.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
all
yeah,
right.
yeah. We'll take a quick screenshot then. Nivedita, please remember to take screenshots of important moments.
Yeah, sure.
That's, that's lovely. Thank you so much. A great applause for all the people who, all the authors have released. And it's like every release is a wonderful moment, even if it is online or offline. They say that an entire year you can release at various places, right? At any time, online or offline. So it's wonderful. Thank you so much, everyone. Now, maybe we can get into a session where the authors can read from their favorite excerpts of their books. So we'll begin with G Sharp because Geetha ma'am has to leave early. So we'll begin with them and then we'll go on to Nithya, Ankush, and then me. Congratulations, all. Yeah,
Thank
please,
you. May I start? Because I'm in a
please,
bit of
please.
a rush. Sorry about this last minute confusion. I just would like to say a couple of words about how this collaboration came about. It was Shikhandin's idea. And she has a love for walking, and all of us have at some point in time, whether we are regular walkers or not, we also, walk and find something. There's walking offers everyone something, whether it's just the looking around, the beauty around us, observing nature, observing people, or even just getting rid of thoughts. It's like a therapy. Walking is often a therapy when your stress actually vanishes. And this, many people have spoken about this. I have started my love for walking was started with reading about walking, especially Thoreau's essay on walking. And although my walking is erratic, it's probably one of the best things we can do to keep ourselves going in not just the literal sense, but also metaphorically. So Shikhandin's idea fructified. We had many moments together, many discussions, and it was wonderful collaborating with two very accomplished poets. Although I actually have been writing poetry, mine took gathered momentum only after towards the end of my career. So I was very happy to collaborate with such accomplished poets and have the benefit of their views, their thoughts. I'll just read one poem I've written. It's called Insomnia. It's on page 64 of the book. A mind full of memories is rated higher than one where even names are lost in a forest of flitting flies. Ahead of our bedtime, we go to the park. I give her a blue flower that I picked from the ground, delicate but still shapely, the name of which I don't know. Mother looks pleased and sits on the bench while I walk, listening to a podcast. Mother has now unlearned her role of being a mother and is free of care. She taps a talam with her feet to a hidden ragam as she strokes the blue petals. Many bodily pains wait for the night to ambush, and my mind turns over their intensities, wondering where I am heading or how long this will linger. Sleeplessness spreads over like a clammy wet towel on a rainy day. Mother rests as radio music plays in the grooves of her mind. That was my poem.
Shall we move on to Shivkami, ma'am?
Yeah. So
For more than a year, we have been going around, walking around with this book, and it has kept us very. We have enjoyed the effort we have put in.
Sivakami, can you speak up, please? I can't hear you. Audio is very low.
For more than a year, we have been walking around with this book, and this collaboration, we have really enjoyed this collaboration. So this book has seen many launches. It was Sonia and I who first launched it in Samyukta Poetry. After that, Prakriti took it up for their festival. We had a very good, we read in colleges, 3 colleges, at an art gallery, art gallery, and also at a very posh pub, the Pasha. So after that, we traveled to a different city, Kolkata, where the International Book Fair was. Shikhandin and I went, and it was a very enjoyable experience because we met all our friends there, all our poet friends, and the International Poetry Festival is really it's so
Book fair. It was a book
Yeah.
fair, Shivakami.
book fair. Book fair. And what did I say? Okay. And the pen prints, the publishers took care of us, and there was a press conference. We thoroughly enjoyed that. And we met all our friends there. Most of them come to the book fair, and some of them live in Kolkata, and we met all our Facebook friends also over there. After that, we came back here, and Jairam Sheshadri hosted a launch in the IPC India Poetry Circle. And the book has seen good interviews, like Tuhin interviewed us, Tuhin Rosario, and Sugit also, and the wife of Rajna Singh. There were very good reviews. After that, yeah, it has been very pleasant going along with this collaboration. And let's see. And there have been collaborations earlier in Indian poetry, and I wish more people would join in and work towards a book like this. We have thoroughly enjoyed it. Now, shall I go on to the reading of the poem?
Yes, ma'am.
A Bhutto performer walks on a tree. Each movement a moment. Atsushi Takanouchi unwinds slowly like a robo. Keyed up. Let loose on a spring. I tried counting his ribs outside his rib cage. One could have drawn a skeletal diagram. I could hear the blood course up and down his spine, the contraction of muscles in his chest, like a kabaddi player, like a kabaddi carrier poking spears in his jaw and belly. I hold my breath as Takanuchi steps down from the stage and clings to a tree. I name all the animals we have seen thus far. Now I can go home to say, I found my God in a dance. He moved between the branches of a tree and walked like horses. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now, over to Shikhandin.
Yes, over to Shikhandin, please. You're muted. Yeah.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yes,
Am I
yes.
audible?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Usawa, you lovely folks from Usawa, for hosting us. And thank you for the opportunity to read from my book. It's been a lovely journey with Geetha and Sivakami, 2 poets I really admire. I had the occasion to meet Geetha as a poet for the first time when I was privileged to launch her book, at the Prakriti Foundation event, and when I went through the books, her books, I realized poems. I realized what a beautiful. I mean, she has this lovely, understated way of putting forth, something that is so profound, and it comes to you very gently. It's as, and another thing I noted is the sweetness of her voice matches the sweetness of her poetry. This normally doesn't happen. I mean, like you have some lovely poets who write lovely poetry, but then the physical voices don't always, carry the poetry across. So I found that very charming and lovely.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Sivakami Velliangiri, of course, she is a poet I've adored since 2006, I think, when I met her. It was just been such a wonderful journey. I mean, like, when you want to encounter something unusual in a very traditional setting, Sivakami Velliangiri is the poet you should go to, and her poetry is just marvelous, just marvelous. So I'll continue to love Sivakami's poetry till my dying day. I can't talk enough. As for me, well, I love poetry and I read a lot of poetry. And when I write with my heart and sincerity. But I don't think I push my poetry enough because somehow that just never happens. So this collaboration with Geetha and Sivakami was really something very new, and it was something that I cherish a lot. And in fact, after we finished our journey, I was so charged up. I wanted to do another book with them, and I got very emotional. But anyway, that's another story for another day. And I won't take up too much of your time. I'll just quickly read a poem. It's a poem I haven't read before. It's called Fireflies. One April evening, I saw the dance of fireflies. Small flames coruscating amidst the gnarly boughs of an old Indian almond tree, which fell to a cyclone a year later. By then, the fireflies were already gone. Beyond the tree, over the marshy fallow land, where wading birds come and go, because they are tough enough to withstand urban clutter. The fireflies disappeared in a wink. I think of them when I look up, but even the stars are veiled these days. The moon has dulled to a pewter shade. This April, I walked a mile to reach the lake where the water weeds are struggling for their right to exist. The sun was about to sink when I met the lake's cracked lips. The gloaming was a ghost haunting plaintively. The air was sad and still. And then I saw it. A light, a spark, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. A pinprick burst, then another and another, bouncing around in the gloom, the tiniest of holes poking through the newborn night skin. Mesmerized, I stood there like a tourist at a resort built near a temporary habitat for migratory birds. My footprint, a dead weight tied to a noose. Thank you.
Lovely, lovely poem.
Lovely.
Thank you.
you so much. Lovely poems. We'll move on to Nithya. Nithya, you're muted too.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Babitha, for being a wonderful host. Thank you, Smita and Uzawa team for this opportunity. My collection of poems is titled Kitchen Poems. And as the title suggests, basically, the poems are all about food and kitchen. So when someone asked me, are you someone who cooks well? My answer was, I started cooking maybe 5 or 6 years ago. That's it. I never cooked food by myself before because I was always supported by women in my house, my mother, my mother-in-law. They are all great cooks. So I never had an opportunity to get into the kitchen until we moved out and we started living all by ourselves. But food and love for food is something which goes back to my childhood. We had an exceptional cook in our family who was none other than my grandfather. whenever we talk about childhood memories about food, usually we talk about our grandmothers. But in my case, it was my grandfather. And in Kerala, we call him Appachan. That's how we would address our grandfather. So Appachan was a perennial presence in the kitchen. He'll wake up early in the morning. He'll go to the kitchen. He'll make the breakfast, and he'll pack lunch boxes. And one of the things which I should say is that I've never seen him grumbling in a kitchen, which I would say is quite an accomplishment. Being a working mother myself, this is something which I cannot really do. So he would share stories. I'd be perched on the kitchen platform, and he would be grinding coconut, or he might be, making doshas. Along with dosha, along with the smell and the feel and texture and everything which happens in the kitchen, he'll share stories about his childhood, stories about his parents, stories about things which we had never seen at all. So when somehow I started putting together memories, food also seeped in. And that's how a collection of food poetry came out. And this book is dedicated to my grandfather, who was my playmate and who was a very good friend. And the opening photo is basically myself and my grandfather playing a kitchen set. This was taken in 1987, I guess, 87 or 88. So I'll try to read one poem, the last poem, which is based on the cover page of this book. This cover page is a shot taken by my friend Ebi from a tea shop in Wayanad, maybe 10 or 11 years ago, wherein you'll find a parota chef. That's how I have addressed him in the poem. And parota is basically the daily bread of Kerala, I should say. Something which you cannot miss in Kerala. Parota and beef are basically, we are specialists in parota and beef. And this is basically a man making parota. So this is a parota poem for you. Parota, we say parota. We don't say paratha, we say parota. In Kerala, one can never miss a plate of this flat bread, which rolls on the tongue and bursts in a crispy flavor. A few historians map its evolution and journey from West Asia to satiate the Kerala tongue. Kneaded with oil, salt, milk, and sugar, the dough dreams under a wet blanket until yanked free, pulled, stretched, punched, and kneaded again. A showstopper, the parota chef displays splendid skills, throwing this elastic flying saucer onto the tiled platform. On the menu, christened as nool parota, bun parota, pal parota, kiri parota, coin parota, and putta parota, they thumb their chests, the coveted siblings of Kerala parota. Moving on to another poem, which is titled Kindness Menu. Now, this is a poem which came in Uzawa Literary Review a few, I think last year, I'm not sure which year. There was a prompt which was given out. The theme was kindness. And this poem basically was first featured in Uzawa. So this is a poem which is based on a memory I have with me. Basically, again, another kitchen story which I heard from my grandmother, not my grandfather. Kindness menu. My grandmother knew a woman whose kindness spluttered like mustard seeds in hot oil, scented like curry leaves and sautéed shallots, and layered like grated coconut between wheat putta. She spoke no language of love, but washed away a man's abuses in soap water trickling down the drain each night for 16 years. For him, her kindness was overcooked, unsalted, extra salted, or extra hot. One night, she fed him the finest biryani in the village. Their daughter, past 15, stared at her father's unkind hands, which groped her breasts and felt her ass when mother wasn't around. By the next morning, he was dead. The autopsy read poisoned. That kind of a woman, my grandmother said over the din of the grinder. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nithya. Oh, mouth-watering poems, especially the paratha ones. So we'll move on to Ankush. Ankush, are you there?
Yeah, I'm finally there. Yeah. So hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you to Usawa and Smita and Babitha for doing this. And I missed the screenshot. Then I was just feeding my son. So this is my book, Field Notes on Kindness. And thank you so much for the kind introduction and the lovely things that you said. I also want to thank Babitha for her review of my book, which she had written. Very insightful. And my this book has grown over many years from 2019. I mean, it was titled something else before, and then along with the poems, the title also underwent many iterations. And I think what working on the title helped me do is to actually think very deeply about what the broad sort of preoccupation or thread is which sort of binds my poems. And one of the things which I realized was this question of vulnerability and the question of or those places, situations, moments when we tend to fall short of who we are supposed to be, or who we want to be, and so on and so forth. And I think once I started looking at my poems from that point of view, it helped me to edit them from that point of view and explore this question of vulnerability. And with vulnerability also comes the question of kindness. Kindness towards the other, whoever that could be, and kindness to ourselves. So my poems broadly looks at that very liminal, very undefinable, very amorphous boundary between the self and the other, and how something like kindness or something like empathy can be fostered or is fostered, is lost, is gained, is regained, so to say, in that sort of liminal space, and how that leaves us in the aftermath, in the afterward. So the poem which I will read out, one of the ones which I wanted to read out is called Chaos Sonata. It's a short poem. It's accompanied with a picture of my son, and it's called Chaos Sonata. So I'll just read this out. 3:30 a.m. Vocal cords the size of Eiffel crash my ears. I stuff my mouth with a hand grenade's worth of silence before a hopeless soldier, now surrounded, pulls the pin. Somewhere in Diaper City, a war rages. Trenches overflow with effluents. Moonlight cuts us into shrill chaos sonata heard in this amphitheater of three. We implode so shrill, I swear I thought I heard you. Nowadays, I can't hear you. I try. The chasm between banality and grand narrative is so small, no feeding pillow can sleep over it. Empty bottles, nipples, feeding spoon, nestle in the sterilizer's womb you forgot to turn on. For a brief moment, there is stillness so white, I thought I'm in a cloud, free falling into your throat to embrace vocal cords sketched in an arc of innocence. Mutual helplessness and learning is the name of this game. Love was never the deficit. Sleep was, is. Love was never the deficit. Sleep was, is. So that is Chaos Sonata. And then there is, going to the other side of the generational divide. It's a favorite poem of mine. I don't know. I feel very comfortable reading it. It's called Cactus. Uh,
Page number?
it's on page number 69, ma'am. It's called Cactus, and it's on page 69 for whoever has the book. It was published in Vyavya a long time back. Uh, and it goes like this. After 12 years of living away from home, I arrive at the following statistic. Distribution of talk time while calling up home. Sister, 38 minutes, mother, 22 minutes, father, 1 minute and 12 seconds. Seems the father, forever caged in name and narrative, manages to survive, saw affection like the cactus plant. He needs only a little water to survive. The emotional realm, dominated by mother, like her kitchen, is watery, moist, redolent, a swamp of affections that will never set one free. What transpires between me and him, true strangers sitting in front of the television, watching the evening news, is telegraphic need, purpose sharpened by want. Even a hug at a farewell seems out of place, like a vestigial organ, touched only by accident. After grandmother died, one evening he called me and spoke continuously for 36 minutes. We discussed politics, cricket, his love for swollen puris, an old sweetheart, that one time he was in Iraq and drove 50 miles to catch a glimpse of Saddam. In that moment, the skies of my childhood cut open like a cataract. Perhaps all grief is an aftermath of love, all love a preparation to face something glorious in ourselves. A cactus needs less water, but more sun, a lot more sun. A cactus needs less water, but more sun, a lot more sun. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ankush.
Yes.
So now it's my
Yeah.
turn.
Yeah.
My book of short stories is called The Way Madmen Smell. In fact,
Wait,
I've been
let me find you and pin you. Wait, where are you?
I'm here.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, fine.
Yes, please
So
go ahead.
this collection, in fact, I worked on for around 5 years. So I've been writing poetry before till 2017 when I wanted to write my novel, and I just went ahead and wrote. And it hasn't found a publisher yet. It's there in the dark, but one day it will. Then during the COVID times, again I became prosaic. Of course, in academic writings, I am forced to be prosaic most of the time. But then here again during COVID, it was a very turbulent time. The only way in which I could get out of the kind of turbulence was through creativity, through writing, and of course painting. Those were the releases. And it was during that time I started writing my short stories, and especially for proms and competition calls and things like that. And strangely, they got published in many journals. So that was a great motivation to me. So I started writing again, and then in 5 years, I put together 10 published short stories, and I thought it's time for it to become a collection as well. And then Dibya was very happy to accept it. Of course, I was very happy to get it accepted. But then my short stories are kind of crazy at times because my father was very annoyed with me for writing one of the short stories. He was quite unforgiving. And I was like, I thought maybe I had to write in all my honesty with a lot of imagination put into it. But it came as quite as a shock to him. But slowly he kind of reconciled. In his old age, he had to kind of reconcile to what I have written because there was a lot of imagination too. I hope he has forgiven me for that. So it has raised quite a few eyebrows because uh, somewhere, I also talked about madness. I also talked about violence, emotional violence, especially at home. The kind of strange ways in which life intersects with uncertainties and things like that. So this, what I'm going to read is called Nangu's Daughter. Actually, a lot of my short stories have real stories behind it that I have caught up from somewhere and I reworked on them and I put my own stuff into it. So when I was working in the Northeast, there was I used to roam around in the villages, and there used to be a man called Nangu, and he used to roam around utterly naked. And I mean, he was like unembarrassed about it. He's quite unabashed about his presence. But the women, who saw him used to run away and they used to make fun. And he was pretty nonchalant about the entire thing. He went about with his life. Except during winters, he used to cover himself because of the uh, extremity of cold out there. Then I was wondering, how is it like being his daughter, one of his family members? And that's what prompted me to write this story called Nangu's Daughter. I just read just one page out of it. I was embarrassed by my father's aversion to clothes. Our ancestors wore nothing but the sun, he'd say with a grin, as if history itself excused the stares. He found clothes unbearably itchy and uncomfortable. Whenever my mother tried to tie a sarong around him, he threw tantrums like an obstinate child, rolling on the ground and kicking up a fuss, cursing her and shredding the sarong to pieces. In winter, he'd wrap himself in a big mildewed Naga shawl and sit near the fireplace drinking ginger tea. Underneath, he'd be completely naked. One evening, as we shelled peas and deveined vegetables by the kitchen window, my mother spoke without looking up. You learn to live with certain things, she said, her voice light, but her hands trembling slightly. It stops bothering you after a while. I caught the flicker in her eyes, the kind that spoke of swallowed pride and sleepless nights. She smiled too quickly, as if to convince us both. I nodded, pretending to believe her, though I knew the look too well. It mirrored the one I wore every time a father walked past our window, blatantly naked to the world. By default, I became the target of the village jokes. My father was a main subject of mockery, and as his daughter, I bore a significant share of ridicule. People called me Nangu's daughter and seemed to forget that I had a name. Mother had given me an exquisite name, at once beautiful and delicate, Pahi or Petal. I often felt naked when people called me Nangu's daughter, but eventually I adapted myself to being called by that name. They called him Nangu, the naked man, and he wore the name on his naked skin, unbothered and unashamed. Children shrieked and darted behind him when he zipped past them on a bicycle, half in mock fear and half in delight, while grown ups snickered behind cupped hands. My father never flinched, never scolded, never noticed. His world was mapped not by people, but by the moods of the weather. Moods of weather. So this is an excerpt.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we should all read a little more from our books, and then Babitha, should we open for discussion amongst
Yeah.
us? Yeah.
I think these poets have such lovely poems,
Yes.
such evocative poems. I think we'll have one more round of reading before we take uh, some questions, right?
Yeah. I think that's a good idea.
So this time we'll begin with Ankush and move backwards.
Done.
So,
Read one more. Okay.
pardon?
So we have to read like one more.
Yeah. If you can read one poem, then we'll go to Nithya and then to Shikhandin and Sivakami.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, I was not.
Page number.
Page number 67. So this is just a companion piece to the previous poems which I read. It's called Some Men I Know. Goes like this. Took 38 years to find Dadu's life and later death. Expand hum like from the tinnitus of afternoon family gossip. In poems, when I touched the hard bark of his face, it whispered, I was a man worth my salt, though I couldn't keep your grandmother happy. He died young. He looks younger in his photographs. I wonder, can he catch the smell of summer grass wherever he is? My father says, okay, sorry, I'm just laughing. My son is shrieking behind. It's so difficult to stay serious. The TV is on in the other room and he's just whatever doing something which 5-year-olds do when they watch dinos. I'll just start again. Sorry. Some men I know. Took 38 years to find Dadu's life and later death, expand him like from the tinnitus of afternoon family gossip. In poems, when I touch the hard bark of his face, it whispers, I was a man worth my salt, though I couldn't keep everyone happy. He died young. He looks younger in his photographs. I wonder, can he catch the smell of summer grass wherever he is? My father says, do your homework. His voice, a faraway lorry's night horn, undoing coagulated silence. My father drops me to school, sunshine or rain. I resist begrudging him his eaten away blue scooter my friends jeer at. I don't see my father as I see my grandfather. One has all the cracks materiality confers. When Thamma died, he spoke to me for 47 minutes about Dadu, the long deceased, and not Thamma. Grief is said to do this, make the near farther and the far nearer. He says, as the end neared, Dadu's stubble mirrored path. That's when they knew it was time. The precise term he used for the tree was Pani Joma. That's when I knew some stories say more than what we'd prefer to hear. When my son was born, my father sang to quieten him on colic nights. Cradled by the empty shell of night, they both looked their most humane. He gets nervous seeing me change my son's diaper. I see each move now, a tapestry of innocence, knifing around time's raw heart. I see each move now, a tapestry of innocence, knifing around time's raw heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankush.
Welcome. Thank you, Babitha.
We'll move on to Nithya.
Thank you, Babitha. I'll read this poem titled Fridge, which doesn't really need any introduction because we are all familiar and so thankful to the refrigerator who helps us tide over many problems in our house every day. Yeah, page number, ma'am, 63, ma'am. Page number 63. I've always found myself standing in front of the refrigerator and literally talking to the fridge because I think in my house, the fridge is the most patient listener to whatever I have to say. So this particular poem was born of, such very mad experiences. So the title is Fridge. The women in my family are grateful to this heavy machine standing tall in their kitchens. For years, they have frozen their wounds within. Squabbles with neighbors, snaky slithering gossips, signs of wild male fantasies on their thighs, and purple bruises on breasts, arthritis and backache, forced abortions, and miscarriages. Every secret tucked inside containers and tins of various sizes and shapes, shut with cream and white lids. The women freeze the burden of hush and shush in their canned hearts. The women freeze the burden of hush and shush in their canned hearts. Thank you.
Thank you, Nithya. We'll move on to Shikhandin.
Sorry, I had muted and think myself, so I hope I'll just read a short poem. It's on page 101 for those who have the book, and it's called This Short Walk to Come. Now, just to introduce the poem, my husband and I have been together for 46 years now. I mean, of course, 10 of those years we were going steady. We were not married then. But then we've been together. We met each other as teenagers and whatever we've been. So this poem is kind of a reaction to the previous poem, which is called That Long Walk of Ours. And this says, This short walk to come. I see you, me, tri-legged each, sun-glint on our spectacles, 2 semicolons in the morning. That future isn't far. How did this happen? This you, this me, this partnership that feels like placenta, nutrient-rich discard. The 2 humans we birthed and raised together is the umbilicus we grasp for support. The threshold, a short step. We did not cross it. Instead, we just kept going. We will keep going until one goes. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Shikhandin.
Thank you.
Coming in.
Me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So before I read this poem, I would like to place the location. It is in Pugalur or Kaidapuram, where they make newsprint paper. And my husband was the managing director there, deputy managing director for more than 23 years. And to make use of that fly ash, which is a waste product, he started a cement factory. So the cement factory is in the periphery of the newsprint factory. Just to make the location, and then now I'll read the poem. Periya Muni, Chinna Muni. Under the gnarl tree with widespread roots, demigod Muni sits, waiting for his devotees, ever ready in his fine white stallion. The place is fenced with spiked, wish-fulfilling spears. At night, Muni walks to the other side of the cement factory to meet his brother for this Kallacharayam. The government built a huge compound wall. The night rider Muni was blocked. The coal in the kiln boiler backfired. 2 men died. The local oracle was called in. It was found Muni's mystic a murder. The wall was broken. An iron gate with gaps was made for Muni to pass through. Even cars do not pause but speed along. That's all.
Thank you. Lovely poem, ma'am. So thank you, lovely poets. Now I'll just read uh, two paragraphs from a short story called Tengchi. This is again this is a story from the northeast of India, Meghalaya, and there. See, Kerala is a place where it rains a lot. But the first time I encountered the rains in the northeast, it was a different experience altogether. So now it doesn't rain in Kerala at all. It's so terribly hot. You can ask Nithya, but it's experience. So the story is about two women, bonding over uh, their motherhood. So in the hills, though the rain was a different entity, in the hills, the rain was a different entity altogether. I watched it with a new awareness, feeling as if my body had sprouted eyes to take in the transformation of the landscape. The clouds gathered on the horizon, heavy with water, until they could no longer hold it in. When they burst, the hills and valleys were drenched, the colors shifting from burnt sienna to the deeper greens, as if the very earth had been repainted. The wind played a symphony, rattling window panes, dancing across tin roofs, shaking the trees awake from their slumber. It was a dance both delicate and wild, a mixture of waltz and the tandava, leaving the world outside drenched and shivering. The rain seeped through every crack, bringing with it the scent of wet earth and mildew that crept into every corner, peeling paint, cracking the walls with a quiet persistence. When it rained, it continued for many days without any break. While you were at home, there was nothing to do but watch the rain from the balcony. Tengchi was my help, came to help me with smelling, came to help me smelling fresh of Pond's dream flower talc at 6 in the morning. Even when the rains poured down mercilessly, I would groggily open the door and snuggle back to my sleep. Then there'd be silence, no clatter of pans, no swoosh of water running into the sink, no splashes on the floor, no cutlery falling, and no flicker of fire. And I would dream away in my second sleep, dreaming of hope and my love. After an hour, Tengsi would quietly come to my room and wake me up with a cup of black tea, and sometimes some seasonal fruits diced and arranged neatly on a steel plate. This was about the bonding of two pregnant women and how they looked at labor and childbirths. So now maybe we will open this session for question answers. So you will have questions. Or we'll begin with Smita or anybody who
No,
can.
let's keep this open.
We'll
Let's
keep
keep
it
this
open.
open. Yeah, it was beautiful. Each poem, each paragraph that you read, and everything. Shivakamiji, Shikhandin, Nithya, Ankush, very beautiful poems. Very, very striking poems. And it was a lovely reading. I think let's have a free-flowing discussion now.
Yeah.
Anyone who
May
wants
I?
to say anything? Yes.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. First of all, Smita, I want you to know that every emoji that you send me is greatly treasured. So thank you. And what I found in this gathering today was almost a kind of subversive optimism that brings out this sort of sharing and gathering of your personhood, really. So I have kind of an important question to ask. In my view, at least, writing poetry in particular is a kind of solipsistic art. You are ultimately your own audience. And it is also the intersection of one's spirit with the social ecology around it. Now, in a time where the self is often sacrificed to exigency or differences are pathologized. I found that in a lot of readings today. The self then ends up in the realm of subtext or in the intangible subtleties between the words. So the question is, how do you then edit yourself or edit others? How do you navigate that process? Where I'm going with this is that without meaning to, we often become performative. So how do you curtail that impulse and stay true to the spirit, your original spirit, your original impulse? I think it's probably harder when you're editing others' work.
I think anyone can take the question. I think everybody should answer this question. Everybody whose books have been launched today. Please go ahead.
May I start? Just probably respond to that because I do editorial work for Sahay and also do editorial work for the Navy and other things also. So I think it's an interesting question to ask that how does the editing happen? Broadly, what Shabnam said. So Shabnam, I think fundamentally, I think all of us, or at least I'll speak for myself, we work in language, like or the words on the page. And I think for me, with my own work and with what I edit, I think it's a very simple question of whether what the language on the page is conveying what it is supposed to convey. And I think that's where sort of so you have to be true to the words on the page. I think beyond that, it should not be superfluous and it should not fall short. And I think as editors you look at it, and also as writers one looks at it. And I think with time, with reading a lot, and that's where I think reading becomes very important. Where with reading and with doing this process over and over again, I think you just sort of calibrate that the way that you look at a text. It could be a review, it could be a poem, it could be a short story, and at a granular level, at the level of a sentence, at the level of a word, and so on. So I think so it's a sort of iterative process which happens over a long period of time, I feel, of engagement with the text. So I think that meaning, the coherence between the text, what it is supposed to convey, and what sort of emanates from the page for the reader. I think as editors and writers, probably that's what I look for. I look for coherence more than anything else, and coherence which is again not simply you understand or it is conveying what it is supposed to convey, but also the sort of moral or ethical imperative which lies at the back of a work, because all work is political. All poems have a political dimension at some level. Even the ones which were read today had it. So whether or not there is coherence on that sort of higher epistemic level is what probably I look for as a writer and as an editor both. So yeah.
Thank you. That's very illuminative, actually. I also saw the significance of orality today. As Shikhandin pointed out, Geetha's voice had a certain sweetness to it. How do you incorporate that? Do you read the poem or piece aloud to yourself when editing? I think it's rather important, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, what's carried in the voice. For example, if I read each of your work on the page, I would still miss the urgency embedded in what you were saying. Or even a voice can make something very visual, very graphic for the recipient. So the reading and the visual of the poet reading, to me, creates a more enriched ecology to the entire enterprise of creation. So it's wonderful what you guys are doing today, but I'd love some thoughts on that. Sorry, I don't mean to be talking too much here.
Yeah. Shall I say something about it? I mean, it's a question for all the poets, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Shabnam. I do agree with you that, there is much in a poet's voice when the poet reads his or her own work. And maybe because we should also look at it from the world which we inhabit today, which is much more prone to the visual and the audio elements, not just poetry,
Yes.
but I'm talking about the larger world around us. So
Yeah.
even when you take slam poetry, which has become so popular in the past few years, wherein you have that performance, that performativity of poetry coming in and playing a significant role when a poem is performed on stage. So rather than a poet sitting and reading, it's basically being performed. And sometimes you'll have to work with the intonation also.
Yes.
When I wrote my poems and when I gave it out to Sony Somarajan for editing, for the primary reading and editing, he pointed out certain words and he says, Nithya, you have to read those lines aloud. And the sizzling and the bustle in the kitchen, the hustle in the kitchen. So all that should come in, and the reader should kind of feel that he or she is standing in the kitchen and he or she is making something which is something beyond the words which are printed as text. And I guess even when we take footprints, that particular title, if you take that taken, when we look at footprints, definitely that image of footprints come to your mind. But at the same time, that sound when footprints are made when you walk, maybe in a forest.
Yes.
So I guess there is much more to the orality and also much more to the auditory, the sensory part when it comes to poetry, as you have rightly pointed out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I loved that you, I don't recall the lines exactly, but the poem that you read where about the frozen food being, relegated to the, cavern of the fridge. I love that you repeated that twice. So yeah, I think what you conveyed audibly came across as much more fierce and intimate, but certainly the repetition would help on a page. Also, spatial layout, all of it. You can guess I've taught English in the past, so some of that comes into my reading. So pardon me. Yeah.
Thank you for the input and feedback. Thank you so much.
So Smita, when you edit other people's work, what's your process? I'm curious.
Oh, that's a long discussion for another day.
No,
But
what stands out? Say, if you had today's poems,
no,
how
today I
would you?
really don't want to
Because
make this discussion about anything other than the 4 books. But that's a very good question.
yeah,
We will talk about that at some point.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
Hoda has
Okay.
raised her hand. Hoda, please go ahead. Shabnam, thank you for those very interesting questions.
Yeah, thank you for
Very
listening.
insightful
Yeah.
questions. Please go ahead, Hoda.
Sure. This question is open to everyone, not only the great poets and writers that I have been introduced. I had the honor of being introduced to them tonight. Now, there's something which always keeps me busy when I take an Indian writer written in English, any of those books, when I hold it. There's something comes to my mind, and I think tonight is the right time to ask this question. You all come from a multilingual, cultural country, but write in English. How do your Indian mother tongue or mother tongues, I have to correct, mother tongues echo within your poetry or your stories? Even when they are not directly visible, like they're not exactly those words that you don't have equivalent in English and put it. How do you merge these 2 worlds, and then you create a work of literature And how does it affect your poetry, right in English, but your mother tongue, your way of connecting with the world is in another language? I would like to understand that because it's very diverse in India, and I will be grateful if this question tonight will be answered to some extent at least.
May I say something in answer to that question?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Thank you. That's a very relevant question for us. But before I actually get into answering your question specifically with regard to my poetry, I would like to make a statement about English as it stands in India. English, rather Indian English, is an Indian language. We have our own native English speakers. They are the Anglo-Indian community. And we do not speak American English. We do not speak Australian English. We do not speak British English. We do not speak New Zealand English. We speak Indian English. We speak, read, write, and dream in Indian English. And Indian English, if you look at Wikipedia, the English language actually doesn't and never has belonged completely to any of these Western countries that claim ownership over the language. Because if you go to Wikipedia, you will find, this is just an easy way to know, there are many Indian words. A very common word is shampoo, which comes from the Hindi word champi. And you'll find Telugu words, you'll find Tamil words, you'll find Malayalam words, you'll have Bengali words, Hindi words, which have been incorporated into the English language and enriched the English language. And apart from that, we've had the English language with us for about 100 years or so. And as I said, we have our native English speakers. And we have our varied and multiple dialects, English dialects, Indian English dialects. So a person who's in Tamil Nadu speaks, reads and writes English differently from a person who was raised in Bengal or a person who was raised in Punjab. Likewise with Kerala, because we bring in the senses, the sensory and the auditory experiences of our soil, our air, and that is infused in the language. I think it's a very seamless kind of a movement. I don't think we consciously, move from our mother tongues to English. English very often lives a parallel life with our mother tongues. And I don't, speaking for myself, it's never been, it was really the first language I learned to read and write in. Because in my time, the schools we went to, the convent schools we went to, we were not allowed to speak in any language. We were not allowed to read and write in any language other than English. And then when we grew a little older, we learned our mother tongues and another language, which is Hindi in this case. So we are trilingual. At the very basic level, we are trilingual. A lot of Indians are quadrilingual, or they know 5 languages, 6 languages. It's very common in India. We are a multilingual people. But with regard to English, English is a language. Indian English is a language that lives parallelly with us, and we really have no problems making this transition. And we speak English in our own myriad dialectical ways. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, to some extent, yes. It helps. It helped a lot. Thank you.
Welcome. My pleasure.
I think, when we take a look at Sivakami Velliangiri's poems, as somebody rightly put forward in the comments, you can actually see the kind of Indian sensibilities working into English. She just weaves childhood memories, the kind of parochial experiences, vernacular expressions, everything's like woven seamlessly into language in such a way that you get a feel of India as well as it is in English. So this is where the bilinguality or bilingualism really, really helps us. It's just not in language itself. You see, in the narrative structure, it's like we've even her poems like full of narrative storytelling modes. So that is also very, very Indian. When I read her poems, it's like a Malayali. Actually, she's in Tamil Nadu right now. But then I always kind of strike a chord with her because I can hear the Malayali child speaking to me. The experiences that we have gone together in a language which is like absolutely you we can't say that English is not a language, as Shikhandin said. It's like so part of ourselves. It's not an alien language at all. And this also helps us bring in not just the narrative structure, not just the storytelling modes, but there's also the cultural point of view. It's like I have brought in Garo words as well as some Garo ways of living. Even in the way rains are different in Kerala as well as Garo hills. I've tried to bring it up with some songs, which resonate and imitate and echo the rains. So these are the ways in which, in fact, we also weave in the kind of sensory details into the environment around us, into the stories that we say, kitchen poems. You can see all kinds of the gustatory as well as the olfactory senses, which come into again, which is part of a cultural experience as well. The parota experience, for example. So it's like through the rhythms of speech, through these cultural assertions, English, in fact, it becomes a kind of a hybrid form where our experiences are transported into language and many kinds of stories that we would like to, tell the entire world.
Srilata has this Alamaram, Arasamaram, and all that.
Mm-hmm.
The trees, which are vernacular Tamil. It is from Arjun Rajendran that I learned to have the courage to write the Tamil words in the poem itself. Like supposing there's the sickle, he says, what is the word in Tamil? Use it and it will have more effect. So I have this word Aruval, which is that upturned sickle, that we use.
And I must say, it's Shivakami ma'am who actually suggested that one phrase, one line which I used in a poem, which was initially written Moonlit Owl. And she said, Nithya, I think it will be better if you say Moonlit Moonga, because Moonga in Malayalam means owl. So she said there is a rhythm to it. It goes with the flow. So from Arjun, you got, and then you passed it on to me.
Yeah, I remember that. That Flower's poem, no?
7 Nights of Mourning. Yeah, the one which we edited at quarantine.
It's very interesting to me because I have learned English later in my life, and I find that these, like, I cannot marry my mother tongue Persian or to some extent Arabic with English. The way I feel and the way I perceive the world is deeper in my mother tongue. So I wanted to see that if Indians also feel the same. And I understand a little bit of the part that you nicely and eloquently explained regarding the Indian language, Indian English. But I want to see how does the process happen? Like, has it ever happened that you write something in your mother tongue and then, thought that, okay, I can turn it into English, I can narrate it in English as well, or the other way around to enrich your, writing? Just marry this word, like what the example you brought right now, like one word has been changed for a better rhyme. It means that you had like the greatness of both the world, your mother tongue as well as English, and you married them beautifully to work for your poem. So is it like something which is very common and it happens, and it's very new to me actually. So it's a very new way of looking at languages, especially Indian and English, Indian languages and English. So I want to see that how does it affect your poetry? I mean, like, has anyone here tried writing both in, for example, Tamil or Malayalam or Telugu or Hindi, and as well as English, and can tell me that how these two experiences are different or how they are similar?
That's a
Okay.
very interesting question. Yes, Shikhandin,
Yeah.
please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. No, see, most languages in the world are phonetic because they grew on the soil. English language is a very interesting language because it didn't really grow on English soil. It Many of the words, many of the sensibilities, the idioms, in fact, they came to England, from other. I mean, if you go back to Saxon and Norman times, and even beyond, they were imported by England, and Shakespeare created many of the words. Actually, he's truly the world's greatest poet. He should be credited with creating many idioms and many words, also words in English, which we use even today. And he was a very learned person. He knew a lot about the world outside England, and so he did that. In modern times, we've had, it's easier for us actually, second and third generation Indians, because we have read the works of uh, V.S. Naipaul, and of course, there was Salman Rushdie. These two very famous writers, they unapologetically used the vernacular, as we say. Actually, the word vernacular is no longer used, it's considered derogatory. Regional languages. They used regional languages, or they used the idiosyncrasies of their mother tongues and peripheral languages, native languages, unapologetically.
What about
You'll find it in Salman Rushdie's novels. You'll find it throughout V.S. Naipaul's novels. In the past, before that, Indian writers writing in English tended to either use italics and also, kind of include a bibliography explaining the meanings and things like that. But after these two writers came, then we started, growing into our own, and we stopped. A lot of us still do it, but it is no longer necessary to explain Indian words, because the world has woken up to the fact that there are many languages, and those languages can seamlessly enter English language and enrich it, and beatify the work, whether it's a poem or it's a piece of it's a prose or whatever. It doesn't really matter. And interestingly, some years ago, I remember this because we used to live in Singapore, and the English dictionary included the word la. It's a typical Singaporean word, and it's been included in the English dictionary as an English word. So the English language keeps growing. It's a beautiful language because it's so embracing of the world. And you just never know. Tomorrow, maybe more Persian words will be included. They already are, but you'll find some modern Persian words included in the English language and being used as English language. So I think the process is kind of more, seamless, and kind of it's more organic, and that makes it easy. We don't think so much. We are emotionally connected. It's not so much cerebral as it is emotional when we work with the English language.
And, there are a couple of things also which I'd like to add to Shikhandin. It's like, see, in India you have around 1,600 or more languages.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's like, for a person like me in the South, like I'm a Malayali, I understand Tamil, I can speak a little bit of Tamil, but Hindi also I understand because I've had some elementary kind of learning, but I can't speak or read as much as I can. So for so many of these regional language people, what happens is that English becomes a kind of a link language.
Yeah.
See, like I don't have to learn Hindi to, in fact, talk to the rest of Indians. Or, I don't have to learn Garo to speak to the rest of Indians. In fact, I can communicate in English to rest of India. The second thing is that, like, after transitioning from a very feudal and casteist kind of society to a democracy, English somehow became a kind of a language of visibility and empowerment for women poets like us. All of us were sitting here. In fact, we are empowered by English. I'm not so empowered by Malayalam because I have to, in fact, the moment I get into Malayalam writing, which I'm not so good at, But then there are these patriarchal, canonical kind of, buffers which I have to go through. But then, my expression in English becomes much more easier without these buffers.
Oh,
See, I
wow.
have a community of women writers and poets and writers like Smita, Usapa. We have so many venues who are welcoming, who read my work. Whereas in regional languages, you have patriarchal buffers, you have canonical buffers, which are, I won't say they are unsurmountable, but definitely they are there. I find it easier to write in English than in my mother tongue.
That reminds me of something. Shivakami, please go ahead.
Read Meena Kandasamy. That's all.
Hmm.
I can't hear Sivakami.
No, you must. I was talking to Hoda.
Yes.
Read Meena Kandasamy.
Read Meena Kandasamy. I'll send you the name, Hoda.
I think I had the pleasure
You
of
must have.
meeting her in Kerala in one of the book
Yes.
get together. Yeah, I think she was part of the panel, and she writes majorly on the caste. If I'm not wrong. Yes. Okay. Yeah. I know her. Yes.
If I may add, the part that Shikhandin was talking about, the organic way of speaking and thinking. So in India, because we have so many different languages, the way we communicate flows and intertwines, intersects. So half our sentence could be in Hindi and half could be in English, or half could be in Tamil. And if we are all, amongst, let's say, three people having a conversation, if we all three speak the three different languages, let's say, we would be seamlessly intersecting and intertwining these three languages to communicate a single idea. So I think part of that mixed range of expression filters into the writing. I think it is easy for us to do that because we think like that, we speak like that. Therefore, when we write, we can, bring it into it quite naturally, quite spontaneously.
I see. Interesting. Thank you so much.
May I respond to Hoda's question as well?
Yes, please.
So I do agree with some of what you said regarding the, some languages contain a cultural ecology embedded in their nuances. For example, if you're looking at Shah, Abdul Latif, or Ghalib or Mir, sometimes it's impossible to catch that time frame, that culture in contemporary English. But it may be possible for someone like myself who grew up listening and catching those nuances by the process of osmosis. So then I might be able to catch the spirit of the original verse. So I do agree with you that there is an impenetrable barrier sometimes between languages. But to respond to Shikhandin and the others, very, very good comments about the idiom and the way authentically Indian English has stemmed from among Indians, especially in the post-colonial context. I would say that language is diasporic, and actually the self is also diasporic. Now, of course, my poems are not being discussed today, but I would like to give you my vantage as an overseas Indian who contains all the sensibilities. I've lived in India, England, and America. And it's a strange thing that happens when I wear an Indian garb and eat Indian food. My diction will change. I feel more Indian. But
Oh, wow.
it's an interesting thing that I've observed. Your own persona changes also. So I think translation is a very complex phenomenon for the receiver as well. There has to be a dynamic between reader and writer and translator for it to mean anything, for it to resonate and remain in your consciousness. So I think you asked a very good question indeed. Thank you.
Thank you. So
Also,
can
it's not restricted to.
Very beautiful responses.
Mm.
Someone was saying I spoke over
Yeah,
someone.
I was just saying that
Sorry.
wanted to add that this is not restricted to, let's say, English alone. For example, Hindi, it's spoken so many different ways across different parts of India. So, as a person who never lived in one place, when I travel, let's say, to Mumbai and Maharashtra, my Hindi would would come out sounding very different from when I would live in, let's say, Lucknow and speak Hindi, where there is a very proper, there's a cultural impact on the way we speak as well. So different places would, create a different dynamic in the way we would nurture the same language and express in the same language. And that brings people closer. By doing that, it's not like a question of just identity or identifying with something. It's also a question of becoming closer, becoming more intimate in our expression with the other person. So language, ultimately, the whole idea is to communicate. And if we can do that where we feel as if we are at home, I think then we are secure.
Mhm.
Beautifully said. Babitha?
Yes, I think we'll take a last question and then we'll wind up for the day because we've had such interesting discussions.
Yeah.
And thank you, Huda, for that question, and thank you all for answering the question.
Yeah,
We'll
it
take
made
a
for
last
such an interesting discussion. It was beautiful. This discussion around languages was very beautiful, and everyone brought in very layered and complex responses. So, yeah.
So we'll take the last question and then we'll call it a day.
All right. So, Babitha, please feel free to
Mhm.
close it then. I don't think anyone has any questions.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I can ask Babitha, when you said you had, you felt contrary while writing your rebellious paragraph and were scared of how it would be received. Did you feel like you were committing a kind of transgression? Did it excite you?
I was really excited writing all those things, in fact.
Good.
Of course, the response was like, though I expected it, but I felt a twinge of guilt. But then I thought, this is how writers' process is. And I forgave myself for what I wrote.
So,
That's
twinge of
good.
guilt and a
That's
lot of delight.
Seriously. And what I wrote about my father is my favorite story by now. So, no guilt, but then I'm happy that I wrote it. Thank you for that
wonderful.
question. I think we've had such a delightful evening with so many poems and stories and personal experiences and wonderful questions and such a lovely, receptive and deep, audience who just absorbed whatever was happening online. I just didn't feel that it was an online meeting at all. It was like so immersive. So I thank each and every author who came here and released their books, spoke about their work, read out their work. And I thank each and every participant who stayed with us, who encouraged each and every poem and every book, and supported every author. And my wholehearted thanks to Smita too, who arranged such a lovely evening for all of us, so that a lot of women and men would come together in 1.5 hours. We could just talk about literature and poetry and short story. So thank you all once again. Thank you for the lovely evening, the authors as well as the participants, and a big thanks to Smita. Thank you all and good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Many congratulations to all the authors again. A very deeply felt thanks to everyone who's here. Okay, so we'll be posting this session on YouTube as well, and we'll be sharing the links to where you can buy these books. Please support independent literature. This is where real literature is taking birth, living, breathing away from the hustle and bustle of the mainstream market, perhaps sometimes, but in very beautiful, loving, intimate spaces like what we witnessed and created, co-created today. So thank you so much.